Intercessors make up the bulk of most Space Marine companies. They work as grunts that are quite flexible tactically. Their bolters are generally efficient, and they are also quite focused on doing their jobs. In general, though, they are the vanilla Space Marine, the most standard unit available. Hello everybody, my name is Spoons Rattling, and welcome to my video covering the Intercessors, which are of course the standard sort of battle line troop for Space Marines since the tail end of 7th edition. So, in terms of Intercessors, they come in 80 points for 5 or 160 for 10, so a little pricier than their Assault Intercessor cousins. And in terms of their stats, it's the standard Space Marine stat line of Movement 6, Toughness 4, a 3+ save, 2 wounds, Leadership 6+, and OC 2. Fairly standard, if nothing exceptional for the points. This is a solid defensive profile against small arms and damage 1, though it certainly won't be winning any awards. In terms of ranged weapons, they all come standard with their bolt rifles, which have both the assault and heavy keyword, which means whether they are on the move or stationary, they will be shooting at full capacity. With 24 inches of range, 2 attacks hit on 3s at strength 4, AP 1, and damage 1. Very solid profile for dealing with things like guardsmen or even Sisters of Battle, and especially the Eldar. Their bolt pistols have 12 inches of range with 1 attack that hits on 3s at strength 4, AP 1 and AP 0, and damage 1. This is a standard enough bolt pistol profile, nothing special. The Sergeant can of course take a fancy pistol, whether that be a hand flamer with Torrent, it ignores cover, with D6 attacks that hit automatically at 12 inch range with strength 3, AP 0, and damage 1. Or the Plasma Pistol with 1 attack that hits on 3s at strength 7, AP 2, and damage 1. This can be overcharged, it gains hazardous, and then it of course gets to strength 8, AP 3, and damage 2. Both are fine enough options. One Intercessor out of every 5 can mount an underbarrel grenade launcher, which has both crack and frag grenades. The crack grenade is 1 attack that hits on 3s at 24 inch range with strength 9, AP 2, and damage D3. Then the frag has blast, D3 attacks that hit on 3s at 48 inch range with strength 4, AP 0, and damage 1. Do keep in mind these don't have assault, but are both solid profiles for doing what they need to do. In terms of melee weapons, the Sergeant can take a fancy one, whether that be a Thunderhammer with devastating wounds, 3 attacks that hit on 4s at strength 8, AP 2, and damage 2, or a Chainsword with 4 attacks that hit on 3s at strength 4, AP 1, and damage 1, a Power Weapon with 4 attacks that hit on 3s at strength 5, AP 2, and damage 1, a Power Fist with 3 attacks that hit on 3s at strength 8, AP 2, and damage 2, or a Close Combat Weapon, which is what everyone else has, with 3 attacks that hit on 3s at strength 4, AP 0, and damage 1. And then they have OBSEC. If you control an objective at the end of your command phase, and this unit is of range of it, even if there's no models there, it remains under your control. This is a fairly standard, solid trooper profile, and isn't too bad for the points. In terms of loadout, every model is standardly equipped with a bolt pistol, bolt rifle, and close combat weapon. The Intercessor Sergeant's bolt rifle can be replaced with one of the following: 1 hand flamer, 1 plasma pistol, 1 Astartes chainsword, or 1 power weapon. The Intercessor Sergeant's close combat weapon can be replaced with one of the following: 1 Thunderhammer, 1 power weapon, 1 power fist, or 1 Astartes chainsword. And then for every 5 models in this unit, 1 model equipped with a bolt rifle can be equipped with 1 grenade launcher. This is a very standard thing. Bring the grenade launcher and a power fist, and you'll have a fairly standard but solid troop profile. In terms of buffing options, being Mark 10 Tacticus, they can have just about every character imaginable attached to them. The Captain generally does want to be in the thick of it though, so I wouldn't really bring him with Intercessors. The Apothecary likes to revive more valuable models, whether that be Hellblasters or otherwise, and doesn't offer any bonuses to their main objective, which is going to be taking objectives. The Chaplain is a melee leader, so he doesn't have much for these guys, as these guys don't have much in the way of proper melee. And then the Lesser Chaplain, the Justiciar, is a complete waste here, as these guys don't want to be in combat unless it's against something much smaller than them, and so Fates First does nothing for them. The Ancient can give them the extra objective, but in general they're already good on objectives, so don't bring the Ancient. The Librarian doesn't offer too much except the invulnerable saves, and I wouldn't say that these guys are really worth giving those invulnerable saves. Lethal hits are always appreciated from a Lieutenant, though they aren't going to be like blowing away tanks or anything, and the Lieutenant generally has better options in my opinion. In terms of the Tech Marine, he would probably very rarely be run as a leader in my opinion, but if I did, it would certainly be with Devastators to get them an enhancement or something. And that's sort of a what-if scenario, because in general, the Tech Marine doesn't want to be leading units, he wants to be buffing vehicles and using his lone operative rule. So out of these core characters, there's nothing too much interesting, but that's not necessarily the worst for basic troopers. In terms of the chapter specifics, the Sanguinary Priest does give them the extra AP, which makes them pretty fighty in regards of being battle line, but I wouldn't say they do much, and it would be much better on Assault Intercessors. The Captain, the Blood Angels Captain is the same as a regular Captain, though a little cheaper, and the Black Templars, Castellan and Marshal, are the same as a Lieutenant and a Captain respectively, so again, the same things apply here. In terms of Grimaldus, he would be a complete waste here as a great unit, and definitely doesn't want to be doing objective duty with the basic troopers. And similar with Helbrecht and the Emperor's Champion, these are both very solid models, and I would generally say would be wasted just being attached to your single unit of objective grabbers. They'd much prefer being with Sword Brethren, Assault Intercessors, or really anything else. Vulcan Hastan, on the other hand, generally doesn't want to be leading any unit that he's buffing, and he likes to just be with a cheap unit as a bodyguard, so I'd say these are a fine choice just to sit in the midfield to get objectives and offer buffs. Adrax is a melee monster, so in general doesn't want to be with a unit that isn't very melee-centered, and Ventress is pretty similar to Vulcan. He likes cheap units to lead while he buffs other models in your army. So if you just need a cheap unit and don't particularly want to use Assault Intercessors for him, you can bring these guys to tag those objectives. In terms of the rest of the chapters, I would generally say that the next one up is Captain Sicarius, and Cato is bad in general, and I would say he should be run with a more melee-slanted unit, though, of course, having objective secured in the mid-board turn 1 is at least somewhat interesting on paper. Tigurius in general is a confused model, and doesn't really offer too much in the way of buffs. However, I'd say he's probably at his best with Intercessors. His shooting is really solid at blowing up infantry, so you would have a very fearsome infantry killer with these guys and Tigurius. Marnius Calgar is similar to Adrax. He's an absolute melee beast and wants to be in the very thick of it leading from the front. He should not be attached to your grunt units. Corsaro Khan is also a great melee combatant, but again, he doesn't offer anything to Intercessors. Ragnar is the same thing, very solid melee, but again, he wants to be with a melee unit and be in the thick of it, not running and tagging objectives so they remain yours. Azrael is always good leader, but generally I would put him with something more dangerous, though I don't think, if you do want to run him with Battle Line, put him with Assault Intercessors, just so you have that extra melee power. Asmodai is a chaplain, he wants to be in the thick of it, don't run him with these guys. Ezekiel is fairly niche on his own, but is 100% a melee character, and I would not say works well with these guys, and Lazarus in general just kind of sucks for anything except the Deathwing keyword. In terms of detachments, Gladius, of course, they're fine there. The combat doctrines don't do the most for them, though Advance and Charge is useful for them to jump on something like some light infantry on an objective. But still, having objective secure is always going to be useful. Anvil, with their bolters, does at least let them get +1 to wound, which will make them very good against infantry, but they're still not going to be taking down things like Terminators or tanks in any way. Ironstorm tends to be a pretty elite army, so having some of these guys around just to tag points, since you might not have the most board control, could certainly be useful. Firestorm gives them the extra strength on their bolters, which is solid. That will make their bolters pretty nasty against things like normal Space Marines. And they just do their job with a bit more power here in general. Stormlance gives them Advance and Charge, which is solid. It lets them get to objectives that are being held by light infantry easier, and these guys are good at bullying light infantry. So generally useful. They can advance, shoot, and charge into something. In terms of First Company, the detachment's bad, and these guys don't have veteran keywords. That's enough about that. Righteous Crusaders, they don't really benefit from anything except the Feel No Pain vow. But again, even where they don't benefit anything, they're still solid grunts. In the Liberator Assault group, they can be really deadly to light infantry because they'll be strength 6, they'll be wounding them on 2s. But, I mean, Assault Intercessors are significantly better here, but again, a unit of these guys isn't going to hurt you. Lost Brethren, again, there's not any support there for them, though they can tag objectives, since Death Company can be a bit iffy if they're going to be capturing objectives for you. But overall, I think that even with the ones where there's no direct support, these guys are a fine utility choice to have. In terms of the rest, Angelic Host, they don't struggle on objectives. They'll be jumping around the board all the time, so they'll have plenty of movement. And Assault Intercessors will generally be better at camping the midfield, while those guys go off and do other things. But still, the same thing applies, even if they aren't like a star unit. Having a unit of them around just to ensure your objectives, especially the far-flung ones, is very useful. They can benefit from some of the buffs in Unforgiven Task Force, but in general, Unforgiven Task Force isn't particularly great, so I wouldn't use it, even as a Dark Angels player. Inner Circle Companion, or Inner Circle, I'd say, on the other hand, is solid, but and while they can gain Inner Circle from leaders, I would not do that. Since, well, I mean, their main unit is lagging behind the front line and capturing objectives to make sure they remain yours. Which is useful given how beefy the front line of Inner Circle Companions can really be with all those Terminators and Companions. Ravenwing, on the other hand, kind of the opposite. They're going to have a lot of bikes that are all good on objectives and are very dangerous, so I generally wouldn't bring these guys unless you just need some standard grunts. It's kind of same as every other detachment, really. And in Chance of Rust, they don't really benefit from any of the sagas because they're mainly melee buffs. But again, still, even there, just having a unit of them around, tag your home field objective, tag those midfield objectives, they'll be worth bringing, even if they aren't going to be benefiting hugely from the detachment you're in, which is kind of the story of the Intercessor, right? They're just standard guys, they've got their bolters, they're good at taking objectives, and that's about it. They aren't meant to be a big damage centerpiece or anything. In terms of competitors, of course, the one that comes to mind is Assault Intercessors. These guys do have the sticky objectives over them, so I would generally like to have at least one unit of these guys, but they do significantly less damage, and Assault Intercessors outperform them in most units, but as I mentioned, I like having one unit of Intercessors just to tag objectives to make sure they remain mine should things go slightly awry. The Black Templars have their Firstborn Crusader squads, which are slightly pricier and have more damage, but I think are more suited to like backfield objective camping, since they don't have OBSEC and rely on those heavy weapons. And then Grey Hunters are kind of a mixed role. They get their chain swords and special weapons, and they don't have objective secured, which means they aren't going to be quite as useful as a sort of Swiss Army knife objective unit as these guys are. But I'd say Grey Hunters work generally as more of a mixed role unit than just like pure objective grunts, which is what the Intercessors do. But I'd say the Intercessors has a place among all of these competitors, really. So the Intercessors are, in general, they serve their role well, right? Intercessors were designed with the Primaris redesign to make Space Marines the simplest army in the game, and Intercessors exemplify that. They're very simple. Their sergeant can take a couple options, and then they get one special weapon, but it doesn't change the way their unit shoots in general, because they also have the bolt rifles. I also get a grenade launcher. But in terms of, aside from that, right, they have all the hints of 40k. They have some squad upgrades. They're troopers that you'll want in your army. I would generally bring one unit of Intercessors, maybe two if you have the points left over. Again, just to tag objectives. Even though I usually use something like Infiltrators on my backfield, having these guys just start on the board right there, they tag that one, and then they go advancing off into the mid-board. It's useful should things go awry and the Infiltrators, something swoops behind us and blows up the Intercessors with like heavy bolters or something. You still control that objective, and it gives you extra time to respond, to send a unit back, to reclaim the objective should it be in danger of being taken over. And of course, it's really mainly useful on those far-flung objectives. And then once you've done that, they can kind of just set up shop in the midfield. They'll hide in a ruin, be pretty tough, and be very good at shooting enemy infantry. Especially light infantry, they'll do very well. Though still, don't bring too many of them, and certainly don't attach characters to them. Most Space Marine characters like to be in the fight, and these guys don't really want to be in the fight. I've been Spoons Rattling. I hope you enjoyed this video. Make sure to like, comment, and subscribe, and I'll see you all next time.